Alessandra, good afternoon. Welcome to this conversation. Thank you very much for joining us from the UNWTO World Tourism Organization. You and I have spoken with colleagues over the last couple of weeks. I wonder if you'd like to share your impression on how countries are doing a good job of collaborating in response to the current crisis.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Tim, for this idea of sharing some thoughts and positions over this very important issue. I'm very privileged because at the moment I not only joined the UNWTO, but I'm also the director of Europe, which is the region that unfortunately is not in the highest positions of the numbers of tourists or the numbers of expenses and therefore GDP activation, but isn't there in the number of deaths and affected people from the COVID-19. We've been engaging with our member states from day one, engaging with the European Commission from day one, engaging with all of you from day one, and we've noticed that the response in a way is similar. But on the other hand, we do believe that what will make the difference will be the way that how quickly and how effectively and centrally the countries will respond to the crisis. Because now many countries are already talking about phase 2, which means that after the complete lockdown, they have to definitely gradually reopen activities because otherwise the economies collapse. And some of them are also positioning tourism at the heart, the center of this recovery process. We've, as you know, we've launched some weeks ago the Global Tourism Task Force, which includes agencies, sister agencies like WHO, ILO, IMO, ICAO, and the whole of the industry, and some key governments in the various regions that we represent. So Africa, South America, Middle East, Asia, of course, and Europe. So what we came across is the fact that governments at the moment are responding and focusing on the liquidity issue, on fiscal reliefs, and on sort of giving incentives to the demand side. So the answer to the demand and supply in tourism is obviously very short-sighted, but not in a negative way, in the sense that, okay, we are patching up the wound at the moment. We need to make sure that it doesn't bleed so much. Obviously, we need to develop the antibodies, and the antibodies for tourism is the reactivation of business. So that's where the real deal is, and this is why we've issued recently, as an output of the work of this Global Tourism Task Force, the recommendations for the mitigation of the impact for a recovery process. So what's really important is that countries sort of, together with the management of the crisis, which is the day and yesterday approach, they also keep the tomorrow and day after tomorrow approach. Because as you know very well, tourism is all about forecasting, it's all about programming. So none of the industry people are talking about 2020. They're all talking about what's going to happen in 21 and 22. So in this prospect, obviously, the governments need to walk the extra mile, need to make the vision effort to sort of believe what the industry is saying and support also in a more comprehensive way, because obviously there's a lot of question marks left there for the industry, which is, hotels, restaurants, what do we do? How do we reopen? I mean, how do we manage the health and safety measures? Same applies for the airlines. How quickly can we resume travel? Can we go to destination? How do we manage groups? Even these campaigns that have been just recently coming out from some countries, which is okay, for a lockdown, we're going to have to promote national tourism. Still doesn't confront the core issues, which is if they tell us that we cannot be all together in one place, and we have to be not only 1 meter distant, we have to wear a mask and we have to respect certain rules. Even going, it doesn't really matter where we're going, if we're taking a plane or not. what really will make the difference is how the destination is going to manage that, how the providers of service are going to react to that. So it's important, I think, that governments keep a vision over the importance of dealing with tourism as not only one of the main providers of leisure activities. We're not talking about that. We're talking about keeping the engine running. Because if you stop the engine, well, for how much you gave a voucher or a fiscal relief, which is, of course, as we very well know, temporary, or you give some kind of incentive for investments or whatever, but you don't give the business opportunity or the market intelligence to support the business opportunity, then it's time wasted, because then these companies eventually close.
Thank you for such a sort of broad and detailed answer. You make me think that Europe in particular is a tourism market that's got a lot of very small businesses in it. One of the things that people from the rest of the world like about Europe is this very diverse mosaic of lots of little suppliers, lots of small independent hotels, small companies, and they are obviously very fragile economically, and as you say, the priority for them is liquidity. But as we do look ahead to perhaps the end of this year, certainly next year, and traveler sentiment and what people think about travel and tourism generally in terms of safety, do you see an international role in trying to coordinate what sorts of standards of health and safety at airports? Will there be new protocols for international travel which companies need to respond to so that people start to feel that travel is safe again? Will we need to be taking extra precautions as individuals?
Well, you're asking me a very difficult question, and on the one side I'm honored, on the other side I'm shaking here before answering it. I can answer, I would say, from an individual perspective at this point, for someone that knows the industry. Definitely what we're noticing is that we are, the institutions like ours, and especially WHO and ICAO and ILO, they are tasked, probably WHO more than anybody, with very, very difficult and challenging actions, because they have to issue recommendations for many things, and they have to analyze sectors that maybe they were not even considering before. What is really relevant, we think, is that obviously the interdependence implied by tourism requires that major differences between countries cannot exist. There needs to be a minimum standard which applies to all countries. So you cannot have X, the way as well that I think, you cannot have X a destination with a certain measure of security on airport and safety, and in another airport that is completely, is left completely out. There needs to be some kind of, European standard or destination standard that is implemented somewhere. I was lucky enough 2 days ago to be as well in a close conference between my Secretary General and a couple of ministers from very crucial countries, and this is exactly what they were discussing about. So the question was about borders, was about, okay, what do we do with travel facilitation? Because what is visa now? Is visa just, based on nationality and the fact that you're actually promising me that you're not asking for asylum in my country and then returning to yours? Or is visa based on the fact that this country has all the health measures in place that will guarantee whomever goes there, whether it's a tourist, whether it's a business travel, whether it's anybody going to visit their relatives, will have all the assistance possible? Definitely, what is clear, Tim, is that tourism is vulnerable, the most vulnerable indeed, the most resilient, so the one that can recover more rapidly, because as one of your associates said in one of our meetings, he said, the moment that they open, they lift the gate, the plane will go, and the plane is not going to go empty. So that's definitely, but in reality, tourism is also a very quick and rapid industry. And I'm imagining that all the health measures, whether they are standard, whether they are a little bit of a higher level, whether you're creating a difference, would need time to be implemented. You don't build a hospital overnight. You don't train doctors overnight. So what's going to happen is that we need to focus on how to manage this transition period, which could be from 1 to 5 years, and then lead on to probably a new scenario whereby we are ready to face a pandemic. We know what to do. We don't need to be locked in the house, and our governments have all the instruments to control and to have all the information. Let me just add one thing. One of the crucial elements that now everyone's talking about, which is the necessary tool to proceed, is the sharing of data. Now, the sharing of data, of course, requires that the companies already know what we're doing. They already geolocalize us, even within our house. They know if we're in the toilet, if we're in the kitchen, if we're in the living room. If we have artificial intelligence and we do OK Google, they also can hear our voice. People say that they actually record us. I'm not sure about it. Let's say I don't want to know. But, you know, definitely the data is there. It's not that it's not there, but this is deeper data. No, it's data about our blood. It's about, you know, our health system. Is about the things that we don't even know because they're inside of us. So besides that, what is this data sharing approach? What is the impact that this data sharing approach going to have on our lives, also on our, let's say, touristic approach? Are we just talking about influencing choices? Or are we talking about, you know, using this data from a market intelligence perspective from the government to actually do a proper planning, a proper targeting, a proper, you know, dissemination of people, rather than just being passive in receiving flows and then counting people and saying, hey, last year I've been good, I received plus 5%. You know, I don't think this scenario, if you ask me, is not possible anymore. This is where I think UNWTO is really trying to make the difference. And again, as I said, I'm really, really proud of part of this team, even though in this very difficult and challenging times, because we're focusing a lot on market intelligence, which is not just data gathering. It's like data analysis to the deepest part, comparing all the different events that happened throughout the years, the different shocks, whether it's SARS, MERS, Ebola, the terrorist attacks, or the tsunami in 2004. Let's not forget all these things, you know, that shook the world and periodically shake the world. And so we've been examining that. We've been examining how countries are reacting. We've been advising, and now we're going a step further. We're also trying to identify what possible solutions are there. And we're also corroborating that with our focus on innovation, because the one thing that is very clear is that let's say the no return road is the one that we're using now, is the fact that with the internet, with the connection, with the digital transformation, with an innovation approach, a real innovation approach, you will make a difference. And you will apply this not only to communication tools, but also to skills, which is what type of people are we actually training now? Our children were forced to be at school, and then now they're forced to be home and attend lessons online. And so now e-learning proved to be successful. Are we going to go back to normal schools? Different. How many people have actually said, you know, I've been more productive when I'm teleworking than I am when I'm in the office? So how are companies going to, you know, react to this? So this, I think, is the biggest aspect. And we have committed even more strongly within the United Nations Innovation Framework to making sure that we're at the forefront of the innovation. So we just recently launched a global challenge, for example, which is, by the way, ending on the 15th of April. So if any of your associates has a fantastic, innovative idea, please share it with us. And we are committed to online learning. So we are very strong advocates of the fact that tourism really has the power to look ahead. But the way you look ahead is also you put the right clothes on, because otherwise you're just going to lose. That's all.
So it's fair to say you think tourism is going to change. We certainly need to manage it in a different way, and we've got different digital tools to do that. And there's a whole discussion to have about data sharing to enable the cities and regions to manage the development of tourism better. You right now live in Madrid. and I know you're not sure if the coffee is quite as good as your former home in Rome. But as we look ahead, and as tourism is really about how we share our cities, and that's one of the reasons why people visit Europe, for these extraordinary places that have been developing over hundreds of years. Do you think that tourism in our old cities, in our ancient centers, is it going to feel very different in the future? How do you see, at a local level, tourism and the local community evolving in response to all of the innovation that you can see? Do you see a positive opportunity there as we look ahead to historically what would have been one of the busiest weekends in the year? You and I are having this conversation just before Easter, but do you have a message of hope for all those people and businesses who depend on the visitor economy? Do you see a positive future once we navigate through this tricky few months?
Indeed, I do. But again, I am speaking also, I would prefer to say that I'm speaking on a personal basis, but this is the reason why I see opportunities is because, first of all, when there's change, there's always opportunities. We just need to be very smart and brave in the way that we face them. But if you ask me, probably it's the rural communities, it's the villages, it's the smaller destinations, the ones outside of the main points of attraction that are actually going to be able to benefit better. Why? Because number one, very easily, you can manage access, or you have to manage access. But if you have like limited capacity, it'll be probably easier. It's like having smaller countries that manage themselves for tourism. They obviously have better results than the bigger ones, or the bigger ones that have good results are the ones that are more organized or have a different mentality. No reference to the, let's say, the impossibility of applying rules to Italians, for example, that I privately represent. But so I do see a lot of opportunities coming from there. The one thing that I would like to launch as a point of reflection for all your associates is that I don't think we should talk about seasons anymore. I'm tired of hearing people saying, oh, the summer season is over. Yes, it is. We're not talking summer 2020. This is gone already. This is summer 2021. But the point for me is not season anymore, is when we open, what are we going to do? What kind of offer are we going to give? So, okay, we open in November, fine. For many, many years, some destinations consider November the time when they're closed and they go on vacation. Now, this is not possible anymore. So what do we do in November? What do we offer? What do we have around us to promote the destination? So this is where there needs to be like thinking out of the box, some bravery, as I said, but mostly there needs to be a very strong bond between public and private, because this is the time where the private sector cannot do it alone. And I personally believe that the private sector should speak out loud and should say to the government, thank you for the vouchers, thank you for the liquidity, thank you for the support, but this is our ideas, this is what we want, please help us. Because I'm sure that the governments will only be grateful for that, because until it remains, I ask, you give, not much will be achieved. This is the time, I think, where each one of us can take the step further and be a protagonist and propose. So that's why I think that, that could be even a good side of all that's happening, because as well, I spoke initially to say that we are the United Nations World Tourism Organization is the specialized agency for the promotion of sustainable, responsible, and accessible tourism. I would say that this is probably the time where we're really going to give essence and content to these three words, because definitely there's going to be destinations, and I can assure you we're talking to them that are already thinking about it, that are going to be focusing not only on their safety, but also on their sustainability, environmental sustainability. So, I think this is an opportunity for a lot of us.
Thank you, Alessandra. I mean, for your ambition on behalf of us, and also for encouraging the industry to speak out. I couldn't agree more that it is the time for public-private collaboration to work. It feels like competition right now has taken a back seat, and this is a time for a lot of creative ideas to get together and work out what better tourism does look like in Europe in the months and years ahead. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to continuing the conversation in the months ahead. Happy Easter.
Thank you, and keep up the good work, and happy Easter to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ciao, Alessandra.